All right, let's go ahead and wrap up our last video for Unit 5 final review. We're now focusing on global migrations. Global migrations. So, of course, we should realize that during this modern era, there's going to be more migration than ever before. And one of the major reasons is that there's going to be a rapid increase in population as a result of more food production and improved medical condition or healthcare. So people are living longer, are living healthier lives, are able to afford more food than ever before, and therefore population growth is going to be quite significant. So again, if you look at this timeline of this graph of population rise, we see that from the beginning of the modern era, 1750 to 1900, the population pretty much doubles worldwide, right? And of course, we're going to see it increase much more faster in the future, or in the contemporary 20th century era. Nonetheless, the population growth is pretty quick, I should say, and therefore in certain parts of the world we're going to see overpopulation, and people are going to start migrating as a result of this. Now, the reason so many people migrate is that, or where they're migrating to, partly is within the same country. So this internal migration would be more of what we call urbanization, right? People are migrating from the rural countryside to the urban cities of a country. Partly because, of course, we're going to see that the cities is going to be the homes of factories and therefore workplace opportunities. But again, we're going to see that every industrialized country, at least, is going to have networks of railroads and steamships that would allow people to migrate pretty quickly, pretty cheaply as well, because the cost of transportation is going to actually drop. It's going to be much cheaper to travel further and further than ever before, and more people are going to be able to migrate more than ever before. So we also see that the population of cities are going to rise more than ever, and we're going to see very large cities pop up all over the world. They're going to grow into these major cities, places like New York and London, Paris, Beijing, Tokyo, right? These are all going to become major world cities, and the percentage of people living in urbanized cities is going to grow more than ever before. So that means there's more and more people living in the cities than ever before. However, still the vast majority of the people are still going to be pretty much urban. Rural, right? Living in the farmlands, worldwide, that is. So who are the people migrating? Mainly is people looking for work. Right, people who choose to leave and find jobs elsewhere, like factory jobs for one. Sometimes it's educated people who want look for opportunities elsewhere. So we have professionals, we have laborers. Some of these examples include many Europeans leaving and making their way to the United States. It also includes many Asians, like Chinese and Japanese specifically, moving to North America and to South America. So of course, all these famous images and pictures of the Statue of Liberty, of immigrants on steamships, Italians and Irish and Germans and Jews and Christian and Chinese and Japanese. All these people are migrating to the Americas during this time period. Now, part of the reason we see so much migration is the global capitalist economy that we see have developed. And in fact, even though again we went through the Industrial Revolution, we went through the Enlightenment, the fact that remains that throughout most of the 1800s, most of the 19th century, most of the modern era, slavery is still going to be practiced throughout the world, particularly in the Americas. So we're still going to see the slave trade, even though it gets banned, even though it becomes outlawed. Slaves are still going to be forcibly migrated to the Americas. Slave labor is not going to end until the very late, right? It's going to end around, in the Western Hemisphere, it's not going to end until 1888 officially. So we're still going to see a lot of people being forced to migrate. And of course, these are the coerced people, right? The people who are forced to work. Same thing with British, right? The British are going to send their convicts to live in Australia. Australia was a penal or a prison colony, and for a while. We're also going to see semi-coerced, right? People that are kind of forced, and this will come in the form of indentured servitude, right? You sign the contract, and you're treated pretty poorly, and you have no rights as a servant. And we see a lot of Chinese and Indians are going to take this form of labor when they travel to South America or to South Africa or to the Caribbean. They're going to become indentured servants working mainly in agricultural fields. That's going to be like plantations, sugar plantations, tobacco, coffee, or sometimes in mining, like in South Africa, might be mining jobs. So again, the global economy, we're still going to see a lot of forced or coerced labor. It's not all going to be free labor or wage labor. Migrants looking for better jobs. So remember, slavery doesn't end, at least here in the U.S., until 1865. These are pictures of those Chinese railroad workers. Many of them probably did come here as indentured servants. These are Indians, right? Working in South Africa, or possibly in that country of Suriname, which is in the northern part of South America, right next to Brazil. Prison labor, prison convict labor, that's going to be a common thing. So many times, back then prisons weren't like as elaborate as they are now. So normally, if you were convicted of a crime, the punishment would be hard labor. So you'll be working out in the fields, and again, the level of mistreatment and abuse of these type of workers, even though they're of course convicted criminals, was pretty extreme. Lots of abuse, and lots of people benefiting from this forced labor. All right, let's wrap stuff up here. Sometimes people migrated and lived in the place where the new home they settled in permanently, right? And we see those enclaves and stuff like that. But many times they were seasonal, right? Meaning that they would work for certain parts of the year or work for a number of years before they returned back home. So a lot of Japanese people did this. Remember, the Japanese during the Meiji Reformation, they actually the government encouraged people to travel abroad and learn of other ways of doing things, or learn about business or government. So that might explain why so many Japanese agricultural workers traveled to Hawaii, to California, and then eventually made their way back home to Japan. A lot of Italian factory workers had the same method as well. They moved to Argentina for a couple of years and then eventually moved back. Men tended to be the main group that would migrate, especially since these labor jobs tended to be pretty much, very physical in nature. So what tends to happen, we see, is a imbalance in migration. So it's mainly going to be men. And that means that in places like in China or Southeast Asia, a lot of times the women who are left behind with the families, right, they're going to take on these new roles, roles that were formerly occupied by men, and they're going to take up these new positions, running the businesses or running the household, stuff like that. And so it's going to give, more roles or more opportunities for women because of this absence in men, since the men are the ones going out and migrating. Right here we see some pictures of these migrants that we're talking about. We've mentioned before about ethnic enclaves, right? How these new cultures are, kind of start creating their own little communities. And there's famous examples of Chinatowns and Indian enclaves in different parts of the, what used to be the British Empire. Just remember that this was a cultural thing. This was, people want to live next to each other because they have a common language, common ancestry, common heritage, common culture. And we still see this in, modern day migrations, in the contemporary era, people migrating especially here in Miami, we definitely see, this congregation of, all these different migrants from other parts of the world living next to each other because, again, they want to be reminded of home or feel somewhat comfortable and not strange, not to be some foreigner in a strange land. Again, here we see pictures of Chinatowns, right? And these are found everywhere. Washington D.C., Mexico City, London, right? Chinatowns are pretty much everywhere. One thing we can also see is, when we're talking about this culture, how in places like South Africa, they're going to play, or some of the sports that are popular in South Africa, including like soccer and rugby, or in this case field hockey. A lot of these are going to be transplanted, like in Australia and New Zealand as well. So the popular sports in some of these former British colonies are popular because the British settlers who settled down in these settler colonies, who migrated to South Africa, to New Zealand, to Brazil, to our Australia, they're going to bring in that culture, and it's going to eventually spread throughout the entire country and become a national sport. And again, we're talking about soccer, rugby, field hockey, stuff like that, or cricket would be another one. What else? So when we see all these migrants moving, of course, we should recognize that they weren't always welcomed. The migrants might be to the financial benefit of a business owner who could exploit their labor by paying them very little. But for the most part, the rest of the population might reject or resent the arrival of these migrants, simply because they tend to drive wages down, because migrants tend to get paid less than native workers. And therefore there's going to be a demand in that the government of these countries, particularly the United States and Australia, set up protections of the border, right, to kind of limit or restrict the amount of immigrants and therefore protect the the wage or the jobs of the people. So the famous examples include the Chinese Exclusion Act that was passed here in America, and the White Australia policy. And here we see some of those images right there. All right, so that's it. Thank you for listening, watching. I'll see you next time.